Good afternoon, everyone. And we're going to get started. So if you're here for the common timekeeping task in Empower, you are in the right place. Quick introduction. My name is Chris Wong. I'm the Training and User Success Lead for Empower. My colleague Christelle will be monitoring the chat. So if you have a question, please put it in the chat. And we'll get started. So this session is for all SFUSD employees that are either new to the district or new to EMPowerSF, I should say, or just a refresher on common timekeeping tasks. So for our outcomes, we really just wanted to demonstrate the changes to employee timesheets given the transition to exception-based pay for certificated employees, reinforce a clear set of roles and responsibilities between employees, managers, and staff with like delegated responsibilities, provide you with a predictable and consistent path for getting support, and experience increased partnership over system facilitated tasks. So our theme for this year is one team. So we're all in this, one team, one fight, and we're ready. So those of you that are new to EMPowerSF, I'd like to kind of give this slide just like what is EMPowerSF? So EMPowerSF is our enterprise solution that helps automate and connect business processes across different departments. So, payroll, budget, Department of Technology, HR. We use SAP SuccessFactors as our system of choice. We have rebranded it to EMPowerSF for the district. But the biggest thing is our system is broken down into different modules. So I kind of want to go over the common modules that you all will be working in. So the big one here is kind of this middle section here, Employee Central, right, or EC. So anytime when someone says, hey, log into EMPowerSF, you are logging into Employee Central. This is where we hold all of your employee data, anything from your position information, your position org chart. This is where all that information lies, right? Connected to that is another module that we call Workforce or WFS. This is time and attendance. So if you are an hourly employee, you are entering time on your timesheet via the time and attendance module. We'll go over some of the changes that are different this year for certificated employees, but ultimately, these are our two main modules that you'll be using in EMPowerSF. Okay, so what can you do in EMPowerSF? So as an employee, this applies to every employee. You can look up other employees, right? This is where you would go to access time and attendance, to enter time, and to submit time off requests, right? The biggest thing here is that you can update your own information. So if you get married, go through a name change, update your banking information, update your tax withholdings, all the things that pertain to you, you can update certain information. You will have access to the SFUSD website that has articles and videos for training. So you can go there if maybe there's a common question that you think is that you need an answer to, you may be able to find it on our website and in the training and into articles. We also, if you don't find those answers, you can submit a ticket through our EIS ticket system. If you click on the submit ticket, it will direct you to the resource page here. So I'll kind of explain some of that now. In this main search box, we do have articles here that are listed. So if you type in your question, something generic like timesheets, that's not timesheets. We have 63 articles that have the word timesheets. So you can find an article that may pertain to you. If you see something that you needed, let's say you're a brand new supervisor and you have direct reports and you have no idea how to approve timesheets, we have an article here with step-by-step instructions on how to do that. Okay. And of course, if you do not find anything related to your question, you can always submit a request in the upper right. Fill out this information, and someone will get back to you. A common question I get is, what about for people who are no longer active in the district? The email address does not have to be an SFUSD email. It can be any email. So if someone is trying to submit a ticket, they can, even if they're not an active employee. Oh dear. I'm not presenting, am I? Okay. If you are also a hiring manager, right, you'll have some additional responsibilities. So you will be managing your positions within your organization. You'll also be participating in hiring, right? And you also would approve any data changes to the positions that report to you. So things like FTE changes, those things would go through an approval process that you all will be responsible for. Because you also have employees that report to you directly, we call these direct reports. You can delegate some of that responsibility to other people within your organization. So if you are a school site administrator, principal, you can delegate timekeeper access to your school site clerk. If you have, an assistant principal, you can delegate a backup manager for all your direct reports. So in case you are fortunate to have, be responsible for 100+ employees, you can kind of delegate some of those responsibilities to some other supervisors within your organization. And that way it's not so daunting to be able to have to approve and look through 100 employees' timesheets. Some additional responsibilities for managers and timekeepers, approving time off requests and approving timesheets, right? That's the big one. So if you have direct reports, you want to make sure that you are approving time off requests and approving timesheets. There is a specific flow in how you approve timesheets overall. So please, you would want to approve time off requests first, right? And then have your employees submit their timesheets, and then you can approve those timesheets, right? So once everything is done, and everything looks good, approve time off requests, have the employees submit their timesheet, and then approve those timesheets. It's also your responsibility to help correct any errors for employees. So some of these errors could be things like extended hours or overtime. So anytime you see a red pin, some of these actions are required by you as the manager to enter in a SACS code to authorize those pay codes. There are reports that can be run in time and attendance for those that are timekeepers and managers to sort of help with reporting for employees with their timesheet. So you can run a couple of reports if that helps you identify certain pay codes that you want to make sure that you don't see. So especially that unpaid scheduled time, it's really just a placeholder for the system to say, hey, you're scheduled to work this day, but you did not enter any hours, or there's not any hours that equate for that time, right? So to include sick hours and vacation time. So some clerks will run that report to make sure that they see no unpaid scheduled time. We also have office hours. The link, you can click on the link here in the bubble. We run these at the end of every monthly pay cycle. We are only doing monthly. We are not doing one for biweekly at the moment because we've noticed that majority of the issues that we run into related to timesheets are usually monthly timesheets. So majority of the biweekly paid employees, it was normal for them to enter time even before EMPowerSF. So a lot of that transition was pretty simple and not a lot of people had a lot of issues. You do not need to register for office hours. They are a drop-in. The link is, for the Google link is in there. You can just drop in whenever we have these sessions. We also have guides that we, with all the information on how to do all the things, right? So there are 4 guides. The content, it's about maybe over 400 pages worth of content. So there's a guide here that you can click on the image and it'll direct you straight to the guide on, a plethora of processes on how to do a thing, right? So if you're unsure how to delegate to your time clerk, right? You can go into the time and attendance guide under the table of contents. There's a section for delegation, and you can follow the instructions on how to delegate. So we have them for each, just for regular employees, for hiring managers, and for managers and timekeepers for time and attendance. Okay, we're going to go into a quick demo, and I really just want to show what your profile looks like and some of the things that you can change within your profile. So I'm just going to go to my employee profile. So anything with a pencil, you can make an edit, right? So here I can, do some changes. I need to select an effective date of that change, usually today. And then you can make a change, right? So if I had a name change, I can do that here. Things like your banking information, you can change as well. Under pay information, you can edit that here. There is a 10-day pre-note process to help prevent against fraud. So if you do make a change, please allow 1 full pay cycle, sometimes even 2, depending on when you made the change, for that to take effect. Try not to make changes multiple times, because if you do, it will reset that 10-day pre-note process. So I have had some employees make a change and they'll make a change on the 9th day and it restarts that whole process. So do it the one time, allow 2 full pay cycles before that change takes effect. In the payroll information here, you can access your pay statement. If you have questions about your tax withholdings, you can resubmit for your tax withholdings here using your W-4 self-service. We don't control that. So I know that sometimes employees, we used to show that in the past on pay statements before what people claimed on their taxes. We don't do that. Maybe that will change in the future. But if you're unsure what your tax withholdings are, you can just resubmit your W-4. If nothing needs to get changed, great, nothing will change. But if you do need to change it, then you can change that there. And then of course, access to your W-2. Also to include things like dependents. You definitely want to make sure you add your dependents. I pretty think that's the big bulk of what I want to show. Okay. Where can you get support? So here are some ways you can get support. We do have toolkits that are on the SFUSD website under the EMPowerSF section. I kind of gave an example here of like a cheat sheet that we have for a manager, but there are ones for certificated employees and one for classified employees. So these are kind of like mini cheat sheets for your classification. You are more than welcome to print these out, hold them with you, so that way you always have that. Again, we talked about the support center. If you have questions, you can search. Maybe there's an article that we've already published on the topic. If not, please submit a ticket. I want to go into just reinforcing some responsibilities between employees and managers, right? Especially when it comes to time and attendance, right? So as an employee, Every single employee is responsible for entering their own work hours and or reviewing their work hours, no matter what their position is, okay? So kind of dive a little bit deeper into this. This year, for certificated staff only, we have moved you to exception-based pay. So what does that mean? Starting this year, you do not have to actually enter your work hours every day like you did in years past. Right? We are now assuming your work hours and they will be auto-populated onto your timesheet. The only time you would then manipulate your timesheet is when submitting a time off request. Or two, if you are working extra hours, okay? So the only time you would want to manipulate your timesheet. Besides that, all you would need to do is review it. So if you are working that entire pay period, all you would have to do is submit your timesheet at the end of every month. For all classified employees, this includes all civil service employees, this includes all paraeducators. Basically, if you are hourly, you are still entering work hours for all the days that you work, right? You are using the work in out hour pay code. I do want to just pro tip, please make sure you account for your lunch hour. Right? So whether you're taking a 30-minute lunch or an hour lunch, you want to have two separate work in out entries to account for that 1 hour or half hour of unpaid lunch. Again, employees are responsible for submitting time off requests obviously if they're known, right? And also responsible for making amendments to their timesheet. So if there's a situation, especially for the hourly folks, if you forgot to enter your hours, right, and the pay period is locked and it gets processed, right, once that pay period unlocks, you can go back and amend your timesheet to then enter those missing work hours, right? So if you have missing work hours, right, you just forgot to enter the work hours for the day, it's totally fine, right? You can go back, amend your timesheet, right? Your supervisor would need to reapprove that amended timesheet, and then it will get processed at the next payroll on-cycle payroll cycle, okay? In drastic situations, you can submit a ticket, and we will run off cycles for you. So obviously for like the monthly folk, if a situation were to come up, something like that, we're not going to have you wait an entire month for you to get paid. As a manager, it's your responsibility to approve time off, right? You want to make sure that you approve time off. If you do not approve time off, right, let's say you have an hourly employee, they requested 4 hours of sick and they entered only 4 hours of sick, right? And you don't approve that, it's not going to write to their timesheet. And now that employee is going to be underpaid, right? Because they only will account for the 4 hours of work and not for those other 4 hours of sick. So please make sure you approve time off requests. And it's important that you approve time off first and then allow your employees to submit their timesheet and then go through approving all the timesheets for your staff. Again, approving current and amended timesheets, right? Just talk about that. And of course, any type of retroactive entries, especially if they're really time sensitive. Sometimes when we go through the time off request process, it can be a little bit long, I know. It's there for a reason. We want to make sure that employees are the ones that are submitting their time off requests. We don't want supervisors just to blatantly add time off requests that the employee may not have submitted themselves. So, you know, there's just that separation of duty just to make sure that, yes, this is what the employee requested, right? And not just a supervisor blatantly using someone's sick leave because they didn't show up for work, right? But that does not mean that if that communication was happening between the employee and the supervisor, that the supervisor couldn't do those things manually. So when it's super time sensitive, yes, you have the ability as a manager to enter those things manually. Let's do a demo. of time and attendance. So if you've never done this before, right, logging into EMPowerSF or EC, right? If you scroll down, you see this time and attendance tile. Click on the time and attendance tile. This is the time and attendance or workforce homepage. You'll notice that I may have some additional options here. Most people will probably only have this my timesheet, my time off, right? If you're a supervisor, you're going to have improved time sheets, review time off requests, and even manage delegations. You will also have something called assigned schedule templates. But let's go into my time sheet. So this would be a somewhat good example of what exception-based pay is like, especially for you certificated employees, right? So your timesheet is auto-populated. You'll see that it's work and it says auto-populated for the amount of hours that is associated with your position, right? So in your case, it's probably 7 hours. And right, like I don't have to do anything. I can just submit my time, right? I've reviewed it, I agree, and I can submit my time, right? I could do that, right? In a situation where if you're the employee and you submit your timesheet, but your supervisor did not yet approve your time off, right? If you submit your timesheet, even if your supervisor tried to approve your time off request, because you've already submitted it, it's not going to write to your timesheet, and your supervisor's more than likely going to get an error, right? So we want to make sure if that is the case, right, you submitted it early, you would want to recall your timesheet, save it, right? And then your supervisor can approve it and it will write to your timesheet. Okay, so that's important. Now, what if you are an employee that works extra hours, right? Anytime you make a manipulation to your timesheet, especially when we're talking about extra hours, you as the employee that exception-based pay will no longer have access to actually enter work hours, right? Like I can't enter hours here. I don't have an option to do so, right? So your supervisor or timekeeper would have to manipulate any additional hours that you are working, right? So anytime a manual entry happens on a particular day, right, that's gonna delete this auto-populated time. So in an instance where you have a certificate employee who normally works 7 hours a day as a full-time employee, let's say they work 9 hours that day, right? Sometimes supervisors will just say, well, they work 2 hours over, I'm just gonna enter 2 hours over, right? And it will only account for the 2 hours and not the total 9, right? Because it's gonna delete that 7 hours of work. So we wanna make sure we account for the work hours plus the overage, right? So if you're used to entering time for certificate employees, you would just use that work pay code. You would use 9 hours. It's going to delete that auto-populated work. It will calculate the 7 hours that's normal for the position if you are a full-time employee, that is, and then calculate the 2 hours that's over for extra hours, right? Those extra hours will be a red pin, right? So that means that as a supervisor, that's an error. There's an action that is required by the supervisor to then enter a SACS code to approve those extra hours. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm going to go into a classified employee. So if you are a classified employee, civil service, paraeducator, right, you are still entering time on your timesheet, right? So for instance, you are using work in and out, right? You should always have 2 entries, right? You want to account for that hour or 30-minute lunch, right? So in this case, this employee took a lunch from 1 to 2, right? Does that mean that in reality, this person took their lunch from 1 to 2? No, you don't have to be that exact. If you want to, you can, but as long as you account for it, it's totally fine. Generally, I will tell people, especially if you have a lot of employees, to try to make it easier on your supervisor, especially if you're an 8-hour employee. I like to just do, oh goodness gracious, and I totally messed this up. Just one, I will correct it. I like to just do 8 to 12, right? Make it into 2 4-hour blocks, just so that it's a little easier on the eyes. Do you have to do that? No, but sometimes it just makes it a little easier. Another thing is sometimes for the hourly folks, they'll put in their normal work hours and then they'll add another row to account for the overtime. You do not need to do that. You can just clock out when you actually clocked out. So in this case, if I look up here, right, this employee just clocked out at 6:15, right? And the system will auto calculate what the overage is, right? So in this case, it's an hour and 25, which I think is 15 minutes, right? And notice how it's a red pin, right? So this red pin, so when the supervisor goes to approve timesheets at the end of the biweekly pay period, right, they know, oh, I see a bunch of errors, right? That means as a supervisor, I need to do an action, right? Cool, I'm looking at my employee's timesheet. They worked overtime, right? Yes, I approve, right? If I approve, I'm entering a SACS code, right? And your SACS code is dependent on your school site or program that you are running. This only pertains to civil service employees, but civil service employees can also bank their overtime as comp hours, right? So instead of paying out a time and a half for those hours, they would gain time off a time and a half, if that makes sense. So only enter the amount of hours. You don't have to account for the time and a half. Just enter the hours that you worked. The system will auto calculate that overage, and multiply that time and a half for the hours that you actually worked, and then put it in your leave balance bucket. Okay. So if you look at your leave balance bucket here, I like to use this little thing in the middle. This is a great place to go to troubleshoot. So in the message tab, you'll see all the messages here and what they mean, right? So again, right, there's overtime, and manager must enter a valid tax code for that thing to be authorized for pay. Okay. Schedules, we'll talk about schedules in a minute. But your leave balance, right? This is the most accurate place to look at your leave balance, okay? For that particular pay period. So if you're looking at a previous pay period, right, it's only a snapshot up to that moment, up until the end of that pay period, right? So if I went back a pay period, oh yeah, just got changes, right? This snapshot here is only effective until 8/1, right? August 1st, right? So if I go to the most recent, right, this is effective up to August 15th, right? So you'll see the comp hours here. There is a maximum of 240 hours, so please don't go over that. If you go over that, you're going to lose whatever hours you go over. Okay, so in those situations, if you are literally right at the borderline, just pay it out as normal overtime. If you are a certificate employee, paraeducator, right, you do not get overtime, you get extra hours. So you do not get comp hours. We would just pay you out in extra hours. But here is all of your leave balances. If you ever taken finance, this may be familiar with you with debits and credits. I know sometimes that can be very challenging, but ultimately credits are your positive, and then your debit is your negative, right? And we usually associate that with these parentheses, and then give you an ending balance, right? So in this situation, this person gained 3.85 hours in sick leave, but then they use 16.75 hours of sick leave, right? And so beginning balance, end balance, right? And you kind of see a breakdown. If you look at the show details, you can see the breakdown of hours that they use for each day. The results tab is a really good place to also look to troubleshoot pay issues. You can see a line here. You could do it by date. So you know all the things that get paid out and the particular pay code. So if there's a total, usually that means that it's a paid number. But if you see a zero, right, for some reason, obviously maybe there's an issue there, right? In a situation where an employee is requesting sick leave for a full day, but they only had, let's say they requested an 8-hour full day, but they only had 4 hours to use, right? But they requested 8, the system's only going to pay them what balance they have, right? So if they only have 4 hours, it's only going to pay 4 hours, even though they are requesting 8 hours, okay? So you'll see if they don't have something to cover that day, it might say 4 hours of unpaid time, right? That's just because they didn't have enough sick hours to cover for that entire time. Schedules, I want to talk about schedules. If you, one, do not have a schedule template, if this is blank, right? This schedule basically tells the system, these are the hours that you work each day. So if you have hours here, that means the system thinks you are supposed to work 8 hours this day. So especially for you, for the hourly employees, i.e. civil service, paraeducators, right? If you missed adding work hours on a day, right? And there's a number here, right? You'll sometimes see this unpaid scheduled time on your timesheet, right? It is just a placeholder that the system is saying, hey, you are scheduled to work 8 hours, but you did not enter work hours, right? So there's however many hours, let's say you entered nothing, right? There's 8 hours of unpaid scheduled time, right? Maybe you added a sick leave request on that day for 4 hours that your supervisor approved, right? So it might then say 4 hours of sick leave and then 4 hours of unpaid scheduled time because you didn't enter the 4 hours of work, right? So it'll change based on those hours and how those are accounted for. If it's 0 or blank, right? That means the system thinks you're not scheduled to work this day, right? So it's going to automatically throw a bunch of errors at you that says, hey, this is extra hours, or maybe this is like overtime, right? For the civil service folks, right? And so a good place to check is, do you actually have hours loaded here, right? As the manager, you can assign schedule templates to your employees, right? So if this is blank, or it's wrong, please assign the correct schedule template for your employees. Those instructions are in the time and attendance guide. But I don't want you to use this as a workaround for if you are changing the attributes of a position, meaning you're changing the FTE of a position. So let's say you are consolidating a position. They used to be a full-time 1.0 FTE position that's now going into a 0.8 FTE position, right? This is not the place to then say, hey, now this employee is 0.8, I'm gonna pay them 0.8 by making that change here. It's not how that works. So please, if you are changing an attribute of your position that reports to you, please go through your budget analyst and your HR representative so we make that change in the employee profile under employment section so that all that information gets translated here and we actually pay the employees correctly. Okay. Let me make sure I don't change this. Actually, it doesn't matter. I can just delete out. Okay, great. Quick video on how to submit time off. I'll just play this. It's a little quick. I'll try to talk over it.
Chris, are you going to be able to address the question I put in the chat about putting in professional development hours?
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, yes. How do I do that? Let me play this while I figure out some technical things.
If there's an audio track, can you turn on closed captioning for that video?
Oh, there's no audio. It's just music.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
I can't hear. Is it just me, Chris? Is your mic on?
Sorry, that's totally 100% my fault. Thank you.
Okay.
Here you can select your reason for being off work, right? Your time off request. So whether it's sick leave or vacation, teachers don't have, or certificated employees do not have vacation. But here in the date range, you can choose an entire date range, right? You do not have to do a single day. If you're taking a week off, I've seen a lot of employees will do a single day for each of those 7 days, right? You do not need to do that. You can do an entire date range, right? And then I'll kind of show you what happens when that spans over a weekend, right? So I know this is just a single day. Right? Enter a reason for a doctor's appointment. Okay. So in this next screen here, right, if we entered a date range, right, you'll see the entire date range here, right? So Wednesday, May 26th, right? If we did it all the way to the 31st, right, you would see all those date ranges, right? In the values, you can enter the amount of hours that you are taking off for that day. And so if you only need to take off an hour for those that are hourly, mostly pertaining to classified employees, civil service, paraeducators, you can do it by the hour, right? Either part of a day or a full day. If this spans over a weekend, you'll see under the action, there's a red X. You just want to X out the weekend, only because the system thinks when you do make a time off request that spans over a weekend, that you're trying to actually request time off on a day that you're not scheduled to work, right? Because we don't work on weekends. So when you get an error like that, right, you just need to X out the weekend so it doesn't count the Saturday and Sunday, right? And then you can, go and do it all at one time. Now, obviously, that makes life a little easier for you in terms of submitting. But let's say something changes and you change your dates, right? You would have to then cancel the entire request for all those dates. So let's say you only wanted to change one day out of that entire week. You have to cancel the entire thing and resubmit all over again, right? So just some kind of nuances if case you wanted to submit it all in one big chunk or continue to do it like day at a time just to make your life a little easier. It's up to you.
Hi, Chris. Sorry, I have my hand up. I have a question
Mhm.
regarding what you're talking about. Can you clarify, because I think something happened last year where I was taking a day off, but it was like split. It was more than a day off, but it was split between the 2 pay periods on a monthly pay. And then for some reason, like it was accepted for the, where the cutoff for the monthly pay was, but then on the new one, I got a little bit reamed at school because the secretary was like, well, you didn't do the paperwork for the next part, but I put it together. So my question is, should we split those into 2 if they're in 2 different pay periods?
No, you don't
No.
have to do that. No.
Okay.
The system will do that automatically.
All right.
One thing to note though for certificated employees is when you are changing those hours, you can only do it either in a half day or full day increment. And so if you are a full-time certificated employee who works 7 hours a day, right, you can only request time off based on 3.5 hours or 7 hours. You can't do like 6 or 3, right? It has to be a half day or full day. Okay.
Yes, I
that's just,
understand that. I was just wondering in the 2 months, the 2 different month pay periods, because something happened where it didn't show up on that next month, even though I put it in that prior month.
got it. So you should not have to do that.
Okay,
If
thank
you
you.
do, if you personally have a weird thing, I can look at it. If you submitted a ticket, you can give me the ticket number, or my colleague will just write your name down. And if you happen just to remember the time frame, we can look at it.
Thank you so much, Chris.
I wanted to kind of go over this bank usage. The bank usage is just like, hey, this is what would happen if, you know, your leave was approved and, you know, your beginning and end balance. I had some questions about, well, what happens if my supervisor didn't approve it? Right, but it shows like this preview of what that balance looks like if it were to go through. So if your supervisor doesn't approve it, then obviously your leave balance doesn't change. Right, so if they approve it, then you'll see the results of that leave request that you put in, or that time off request that you put in. Oops, I'm trying to get back really quick, right? And then you'll see your pending request in your time off screen, time off request screen, right? If you need to cancel your request, you can cancel your request as long as your request is still pending. And so you as the employee, if let's say you made a mistake, wrong date, right? Let's say you were like, oh, I didn't want May, I wanted September, right? Like, you know, you can make that change, cancel it, and then resubmit that time off request. If your request was already approved and then you needed to cancel it, you would need to talk to your supervisor to cancel that request. Okay, there is a process for canceling. It should be relatively the same. If you happen to run some issues, you can always email me. Yeah, the process is pretty straightforward. It's also in the time and attendance guide. And then log out. Is there another? So we have some like kind of frequently asked questions that we get a lot. This one pertaining mostly to classified employees, right? If I need to account for my lunch hour, yes, absolutely. Please account for your lunch hour. Please do not just have one work in out hour from 8 to 4, right? You want to account for that 1 hour lunch. Can it enter time off retroactively? No. So you can only enter time off for the current date to future date. Right? So if you're trying to retro do a time off because you are sick one day, right? And you're just like, I'm not getting out of bed. I'm not logging onto my computer. That's totally fine, right? But your timekeeper and your manager need to then be able to manually enter those for you. Can we submit or approve timesheets before the pay period ends? Yes, absolutely. I want to give some caution there, right? Because as long as you know for 100% certainty that nothing is going to change, absolutely you can submit early. If you know you're working the entire pay period, yes, you can submit it on day 1, right? But if something changes, right, you would then have to recall your timesheet in order to make those changes, right? I do know sometimes supervisors, if they're going on a vacation, right, they will say, hey, all employees, can you please submit your timesheet early so I can approve it? So that way nothing happens while I'm gone, right? So that is totally fine. Can I get comp or OT hours? Again, this only pertains to civil service employees, right? It does not pertain to classified, it does not pertain to paraeducators. Okay, so this only pertains to classified civil service employees. So CSC, classified civil service. I entered the wrong time on my timesheet. Can I change it? Yes. So you can always amend your timesheet. If you happen to see it's you can't edit it because the payroll is locked, you just have to wait for payroll to finish processing. Once you see that amend button, you can then amend that timesheet. So if you happen to forget to enter work hours, you can go back and re-enter those work hours. Can I enter time off by the hour? Yes, right? So if you only need to take an hour off to attend a medical appointment that's super close to your site, absolutely. Or you're taking a half day, right? Totally fine. If I enter time off, does it this is for certificated employees, right? So if I submit a time off request, does it submit for a substitute request? No, right? So if you are having a planned time off event, right? Hopefully, I know that's not always easy to determine, but with the best of your ability, like if you do need to take a day off during the school year, it does not submit a substitute request. So please continue to submit for a substitute request if you need it. Again, same concept with entering time off retroactively. No, only for current to future dates. If it's a retro, you need to ask your timekeeper or supervisor, principal, admin, whoever to add that for you. Kind of the same concept as the last one. For classified, can you submit or approve timesheets the day before the pay period, days before the pay period? And yes, absolutely. Right. A good one to note for maybe you are an employee that's in a certificated role now, but you are in a biweekly paid role before, right? So we have a lot of employees that move from position to position, right? A lot of paras who become teachers, right? If you've ever held a position within the district that was on a biweekly paid schedule, right? No matter what position you go into, you will remain a biweekly paid employee, right? So if you went from a paraeducator to a teacher, right? Normally teachers, right? Certificated employees are paid monthly, right? You will not be converted to monthly. You will remain biweekly. However, if you go into a biweekly paid position, so let's say you're a teacher going into like a central office position, right? That might be paid biweekly, right? You will be converted to biweekly. So everything can go to biweekly, nothing can go to monthly. The pay period for certificate employees has not changed. So it will start on the 21st of every month and end on the 20th of each month. And then, right, can I enter time off by the hour? Sort of. You must do it in equivalent of half day or full day. So whatever that equivalent is for you. Just as a simple example, if you are a full-time certificated employee that works 7 hours a day, then you can only enter it either 3.5 hours or 7 hours. Okay? That is determined by the California Education Code. That is not a specific SFUSD rule. That's just Ed Code. That concludes this session on EMPowerSF. So I'm gonna leave it open to questions. I think our session is till 2:45 or 2:15. Don't remember when our session is. Let me look. But if anyone has any questions, you are more than welcome to either put in the chat, raise your hand, even unmute yourself. While I also try to find the calendar. No one has any questions?
Yes, I have question.
Go ahead.
Yes, for you say for the mixed periods they delay because the many reason, and when the next paycheck they pay for, they put the different pay, so they show not very clear because like last year I missed for 3 periods for paycheck, and they put me all together but missing. So I request for like detail because like including for extra hour, and the pay rate different, but they put all together. So how can
Yes.
we keep track for that?
Yes. Okay. So anytime a retro correction is made on a timesheet, right? When that gets paid out on the next pay statement, you will see it as a diff pre-P payment, right? Diff pre-P stands for difference in previous pay period.
Mhm.
It is a unique pay code that corrects for any type of either overpayment or underpayment for employees, to include corrections, right? The reason it's there, obviously I know that we're all not a fan of it, but it could be either, let's say at its most simplest, you just forgot to enter 4 hours of work, right? You go back, you make a correction, right? You get paid for that difference. If you happen to know, obviously, what your hourly rate is, you can calculate it based on the 4 hours, right? And if the numbers match up, great. You know that that diff pre-P amount was for that 4 hours of missed work hours that you corrected, right? If you're making multiple corrections though, i.e. sick leave, a bunch of work hours, all these different things, it is just a total number of all those corrections, right? It is not a breakdown of, hey, you swapped out sick leave for a work hour, or you swapped a vacation for sick, the list goes on, right? I know that's frustrating. We are working on hopefully a future update to break that down so it does then define all the things that go into a diff pre-P. At the moment, if you wanted a breakdown, the only people that can do that is payroll. And as much as I want to like tell you all, hey, reach out to payroll or submit a ticket so we can run what we call a diff pre-P report, that's not realistic because there's only like 4 of them, right? And there are a lot of you. And it takes time to do the analysis for each individual person. I hear you. You can submit a ticket and someone will eventually look at it, but it's not something that the district can prioritize at the moment just because of how long it takes. And obviously there are, normal payroll things that they need to do. That's why we are working on to, making it available on a pay statement so that you all can see that, right? I don't have a great answer for you, but like if you really needed that analysis, you can submit a ticket.
I did for start for January last year.
Okay.
Many
I-
tickets.
If
Many.
you can drop the number in the chat and I will connect with you outside of the session.
Yes.
Great. Chris, we are getting a request to go over submitting a leave of absence request. So I know that in the session we covered submitting an absence request like sick day, a personal day. So let's try what the difference is for an LOA. So thank you for raising that. And we are still taking questions through the chat. So if this is not relevant for you, go ahead and drop a question there.
I have a question too.
I'm going to do the leave of absence first, and then I'll come back to the question.
Thank you.
Okay, so if you need to submit a leave of absence, right? I'm logging into time and attendance, right? I'm going to go to my time off, right? Create a new request. And then I'm actually gonna make sure that people can see my screen, right? There are two sections here, right? The one on the right is your normal time off request for regular absences, right? Sick days, vacation, things like COVID in the past, right? COVID sick leave is not a thing anymore. Bereavement leave, jury duty for all that. The one on the right is for anything related to an actual leave of absence. So if you're taking an extended leave of absence, whether it's a medical reason, parental leave, FMLA or family medical leave, military training, workers' comp, right? You want to use this left side, right? So I'm going to hit continue on this left side. It's then going to ask you your estimated start and end date. So if you happen to know how long your leave of absence will be, you can put that here. Especially if you have a doctor's note that says, hey, you need to be off work for this period of time, you can put that here, okay? It's just an estimate. It's not a, hey, you have to be on leave starting this date, or you have to come back at the end of this date, okay? So you put in a range of dates. Let's just say I needed to take like 2 weeks, right? And then you give your reason, right? Either maybe you're taking a pregnancy leave, right? Donating bone marrow, right? You have a health condition that's not pregnancy related. So this is like for workers' comp cases, right? If we get injured during work, right? Child bonding, right? All these things, you would choose a reason for your leave of absence, right? So let's say I wanted to take a child bonding leave, right? I'm going to then go to this bottom section where it says continue with additional questions, right? And it's going to ask you some questions, right? Right. I have a newborn child, right? What is the date of your child, right? I'm going to say tomorrow. Right. The name of your child. Just going to enter some randomness. During this leave, I'm expected to be away for how long? Is it all day, every day? Is it just a portion of the day? Is it sporadic, right? Or do you have some like weird, unique schedule, right? You can then add those, right? Let's say I just want to be out all day, every day, right? Continue, right? Would you want to receive, how do you want to receive your notifications and receive paperwork, right? So just email, right? And then you would submit the request, right? That request goes to a leave case manager. It is based on your dates that you've entered for your leave, right? So in an instance, let's say a lot of people will submit for a leave that's, months into the future. They may not work on it because it's months in the future. They may be working on leave cases that are current this month, right? And so sometimes you may not get a response until much closer to your leave date, okay? But that's how you would submit for a leave. Any questions about leaves in particular? If not, I will go back to the other question. Raina, was it you that had a question?
If you change.
Yes, I do. Hello?
Oh, wait, sorry, Courtney, did you
Okay.
have a question specifically about leave of absence?
Yeah, just if you do need to change your leave of absence dates, then how would you proceed?
You would talk to your case manager about changing your dates, right? So they will change your dates based on, a plethora of different reasons, right? Especially if you're on a medical leave and, you're going to doctor's appointments, right? And your doctor is extending your leave, right? Like, hey, my doctor is saying that, I should be on leave longer. Can I extend my leave, right? You would have to submit that doctor's note, right? Confirming those dates, and then they would just extend your leave, right? But
Wonderful.
Yep. Just
Is
talk to
the case
the
manager your direct supervisor or the HR person?
No, it's going to be someone in HR.
Okay,
On
fabulous.
these.
Thank you.
And then right now.
Oh, just me. Ah. I'm sorry. I'm trying to close
No
it.
worries.
Just want to make sure that I took the microphone. Not easy when I'm doing it on my phone.
I mean, I can hear you.
Oh, good. I was trying to put the microphone on. Yes, I have actually two questions. The first one, I tried to fix it last year and I couldn't. I've been paying more taxes because I think it's not right the amount they're taking out of my check. So I might have to switch from married to single to solve the problem. Is that okay? I can do it in there. I know you showed me the profile, so I just use the pencil and put a single instead of married. Is that right?
Yeah, that's totally fine. You can change your tax withholdings at any point. And so within your profile, right?
Yes.
The profile, under pay information, how you file your taxes is totally up to you.
Well, it's just because I've been paying taxes and I tried to fix it the other way, but I tried last year, but I couldn't figure it out how to do it.
Got it.
So
Got it.
they recommend me to switch from married to single, so I don't have to pay too much taxes in there.
Got it. Yep. So
Okay.
you would just use this W-4 self-service, right? Go through that entire process for federal and state. I'm not 100% certain on all the things related to those things. That is an IRS document. You may want to consult with like your tax person or the IRS website to like figure out how to fill out the form the way you want to fill it out. But that's how you would do that here. Okay.
Okay. The other question is, like Thanksgiving, New Year, the Christmas weeks, that I have to use my Florida dates to be able to be paid. Is that right?
What type of employee are you?
I'm a PATA, family liaison.
Yes, and I believe you have a break period
Yes.
on those days. Yeah. So anytime you see a break period, these are unpaid. These are days that you're not scheduled to work. So you
Yes.
don't get paid for those days. If you want to use, do you have floating holiday or PD hours?
Yeah, they say they only do like a 1 day or 2 days for Thanksgiving. So to be able to be paid for Thanksgiving, I had to put 1 day before Thanksgiving, one Florida day. Is that right?
Yes. Right. So
Okay.
if you're using like a vacation time, you can do that to be paid for those days that you're not normally scheduled to work. But anytime you see a break period, right, these are non-scheduled days of work. So technically you are not being paid for those days.
Okay.
And so if you are trying to be paid for those days, especially during those holidays, you do need to submit a time off request for those days to get paid for a day or two here and there.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I'd seen something in some paperwork that had said that if we wanted to file a sick day, that we were supposed to do it in advance of being sick. But what if, we have a child who has a fever in the morning and we need to take care of them?
So you can do it the day of, right? Obviously we can't predict everything. But in a case where, obviously you're dealing with your child, it's an emergency, you don't have time to submit that time off request, right? You kind of have to rely on your timekeeper and your administrator or your supervisor to make those changes for you, especially if they're retroactive.
Okay, so just email them and tell them that you're going to be out.
Great. Okay. Oh, apparently you can submit retroactively. I've been corrected. So maybe that was a change we made. So if you need to submit a time off request for something that already happened in the past, right? You can now submit a time off request retroactively. So let's say you missed a day yesterday, but did not submit time off request for yesterday, you can submit time off request today for yesterday. Hopefully that makes sense.
Hi, this is Amelia. I've got a question.
Yes.
Hi, so again, my name is Amelia, and I just wanted to let you know that the last day of school is June 2nd. And so earlier in the morning, I put down 6 hours. And that's the amount of time that I work on June 2nd, even though I had to leave early. So would that mean then I have to put in 2 hours of sick time to make up for the time that I wasn't actually there for work?
And you're an 8-hour employee?
Yes. Hold on. No, I'm a 6-hour employee because I'm a para in special education.
Did you enter 6 hours of work?
Yeah, so I think the question is like, oh, it was the last day of school. I came in the morning and I entered ahead of time that I was going to be working 6 hours that day. But as it turns out, I had to leave work 2 hours early. Would I have to put in 2 hours of sick time for that?
I mean, technically, yes, right? Not to say that, right? Like, obviously, if you talk to your supervisor, right? Like, sometimes we make up our hours, right? So if you've worked that out with your supervisor, that's between you and your supervisor. Right? But in theory, if you entered your six work hours, but you did legitimately leave early, right, and you did not make up those hours, then yes, in theory, you should enter sick hours for those 2 hours that you missed if you missed 2 hours.
Okay, just a moment. So, I mean, I already had an agreement with the supervisor, my supervisor, the teacher, that it was okay for me to leave early. So I never ended up telling the office to put in 2 hours of sick time. But I think okay, I understand what you're saying, and now I know.
Perfect.
One more question. Just a moment. I applied to work at summer school, but never heard back from Human Resources that I'd been hired to do it. So I put in for vacation for like a week. And it was a week before summer school began. So June 5th to the 9th. So I put in for vacation time for that week. I hadn't heard back from Human Resources. And I wasn't expecting that I would be assigned to summer school, but ended up hearing at the last minute. I'd already sent an email to the principal and the secretary. Please, I'm going to need you to take June 9th off my schedule because I'm going to be on vacation. But, you know, there are meetings that they have on the first day of summer school and things like that. So they said they didn't put down hours for the first day, that I could go ahead and use my vacation time. So hold on just a moment. Let me do some clarification here.
Sorry. There is a question in the chat in the meantime, which is how long does it take before new hires get sick leave or vacation? It depends on the classification. Chris, do you know for Paris when that kicks in, or for civil service at least?
Yeah, it is dependent on your appointment type, right? So when you were hired into your position, were you hired as a PEX employee, a PEX employee, or some other weird appointment type that I can't remember? That is important when determining when you get sick and vacation time. So for instance, for TEX employees, I believe you have to work 1040 hours before you're eligible for certain benefits. I want to say you're gonna have a probationary period before you're allowed to use that time. So you'll still accrue your sick and vacation balance, but you wouldn't be able to use them until after your probationary period. So it is dependent on your position and the appointment type for your position. So especially for you civil service employees, whether you are a TEX, temporary exempt, or PEX, permanent exempt, or PCS, so permanent civil service, is dependent on when you would gain access to those accruals. And so I think for PEX and PCS appointment types, you would get it on day one. And, you know, as you accrue, you can use it as you accrue. But if you are TEX and or have a probationary period of some type, then you have to be in that position for a certain amount of time before you can use those accruals. Hopefully that answered that.
Okay, so we've got the question. School year ended. I'd applied to work in summer school, but didn't know whether I was going to be hired. So I went ahead and put in for vacation time, June 5th through the 9th. The first day of summer school, which is really just some meetings, happened on June 9th. My vacation time had already been approved, but I showed up for duty at summer school for those meetings on the 9th. So how do I get my vacation time back for that one day where I actually showed up to work?
So you want to have your supervisor cancel your time off request for June 9th. And so we would then, in theory, give you back your vacation day for June 9th. However, if you are already paid for June 9th via vacation, right, and you want that balance back so that you can use it sometime in the future, right, we would have to determine how much was paid to you for that day, right? You would then have to pay the district back for that day so that we can then convert it back to your vacation to then give you back that vacation day, right? So if that matters to you, then we can go through that process. If not, then you can just keep it as a paid day. And, you know, just kind of like, hey, well, I just got a vacation payout for a single day. Or if you then talk to your supervisor, say, hey, you know, that process is really complicated. It is for you to take a future day off for that time that you actually came to work.
Got it. Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. And we're here till 2:45. Yep, 2:45. Really, no one? I mean, you don't have to stay if you don't have any more questions. That does conclude this training, but you are more than welcome to stick around for the next 15 minutes if you actually do have a question. If not, you can use the time to take a break before the next session. I'll stay if anyone has any questions.